Today, we're going to dive into a massive transformation. It's the story of how centuries of knowledge in the Arab world are being completely reimagined for our digital era. I mean, just think about it. Picture the House of Wisdom in Baghdad or the great libraries of Al-Andalus. These were epicenters of learning that didn't just preserve, but actively advanced human knowledge for centuries. That's the incredible legacy we're starting with. And then, flash forward to today. We're facing an explosive, almost overwhelming flood of digital data, of articles, of research. It's a firehouse of information. So that's the big question for us today, right? How do you actually bridge that enormous gap? How do you take that incredible, rich legacy and help it thrive in the 21st century? Okay, let's get into it. So where do we begin? Well, our story has to start with the past. We're talking about the huge challenge and opportunity of preserving these priceless historical texts for a totally new global audience. Now, you might think it's as simple as just taking a picture, but oh no, it's way more than that. The journey of an ancient manuscript to your screen, it's a really meticulous process. So first, you have specialists who have to actually collect and monitor the physical documents. Then, there's this whole complex preparation stage to get it ready for electronic publishing. But just putting them online isn't enough. That third step, accessibility, is absolutely crucial. It's about making the text searchable so that scholars can actually find what they're looking for. And finally, you gotta let the world know that this treasure is now available. It's a whole system from start to finish. Okay, so that's preserving the past. Now let's jump to the present day. Because while all that preservation is happening, an unbelievable amount of new knowledge is being created every single day. The challenge now has kind of flipped. It's about how to map and manage it all. So how on earth do you navigate this modern landscape? Researchers use this really powerful tool called bibliometrics. You can think of it like data analytics, but for knowledge itself. It tracks who's publishing what, which subjects are trending, and where the major research hubs are. It basically turns this giant, chaotic sea of information into a map you can actually read. And the sheer volume of new info is just staggering. To put it in perspective, in just one pretty specialized field, we're talking library and information science. Over 21,000 articles were published in just a few years. Now, try to imagine that multiplied across every single academic discipline. It's a lot. And this is where that bibliometric data gets really, really interesting. It gives us a snapshot of a region's intellectual priorities. So if we look at 2014 to 2018, the economy was a huge focus in some databases. In others, you see that while law had the most dedicated journals, it was actually education that had the most individual articles published. What does that tell us? Well, it might reflect things like regional economic development plans or a major push for educational reform. It's a data-driven look at what's top of mind. Okay, so how do you manage this constant flow? Well, information hubs, like digital libraries, are turning to some pretty fascinating tools, like queuing theory. It sounds complicated, but it's a mathematical approach used to manage waiting lines. Whether it's people at a bank or, in this case, data requests in a system. It's all about organizing services to make sure knowledge flows smoothly without creating traffic jams. And all of this brings us to the future. And honestly, this might be the most exciting part of the story. We're seeing a fundamental shift in philosophy, a move towards something called open science. The contrast here is just night and day. The old model? Well, it often kept knowledge locked up behind expensive paywalls. Data was kept private, and research was done in these isolated silos. The new model, open science, is the complete opposite. We're talking free access to publications, open data that anyone can use and verify, and this collaborative spirit that even brings the public into the conversation. It's a shift from thinking of knowledge as a commodity to seeing it as a shared public good. And look, this isn't just some abstract academic idea. The COVID-19 pandemic made the case for open science with a kind of urgency we've never seen before. When the whole world was facing that crisis, the need to share research, data, and findings, and to do it fast, it became absolutely critical. It wasn't just about speeding up the search for a vaccine, it was also about fighting the wave of misinformation with transparent, accessible facts. The movement is definitely still growing, though. So what's next? Well, the to-do list includes digging deeper into open data as a tool for innovation, making sure that these open materials are truly accessible to everyone, including people with special needs, and also boosting public information literacy, so we all know how to find and use these resources. And, kind of ironically, more research is needed on the topic of open access itself, just to better understand its full impact.
So as we start to wrap this up, what does it all mean? Where is this whole journey heading?
When you put all the pieces together, you can see this really beautiful story taking shape. It's a narrative that starts with carefully preserving a treasured past, then moves to actively mapping a really complex and booming present, and now it's aimed squarely at building a radically open and collaborative future for all of us. And that leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about. This isn't just about databases or academic articles, it's about the very potential of human progress. Just take a second and imagine what we could solve, what we could create, what we could discover, if every single mind had access to the sum of our collective wisdom. Seriously, what could we achieve then?